The Tiger, I was supposed to be invincible. With armor up to 100 millimeters thick on the front and sides, it could shrug off hits from most Allied anti-tank weapons. German tank crews called it the furniture van because they felt as safe inside as sitting in their living rooms. But in the narrow streets of Italian towns and the dense hedgerows of Normandy, American infantry discovered the Tiger had a fatal weakness. It had to get close to fight, and at close range, every tank becomes vulnerable. To understand why the Tiger's vulnerability at close range shocked German commanders, we must first appreciate the legend that surrounded this vehicle. When the Tiger I entered combat near Leningrad in August 1942, it represented a quantum leap in armored warfare. Soviet anti-tank guns bounced shells off its thick armor. T-34 tanks, which had terrorized German forces in 1941, suddenly found themselves outmatched. The Tiger's 88mm Kuk-36 gun could destroy any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. On the open steppes of Russia, this meant Tiger commanders could engage enemy armor before they could effectively return fire. The psychological impact was immense. Soviet tank crews reported feelings of helplessness when facing Tigers, knowing their shells would likely have no effect, while the Tiger could destroy them at will. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. German propaganda exploited this success ruthlessly. Newsreels showed Tigers crushing enemy positions, their thick armor impervious to enemy fire. Tank aces like Michael Wittmann became household names, credited with destroying hundreds of Allied vehicles. The Tiger became synonymous with German technical superiority and battlefield dominance. But this reputation was built on a specific type of warfare: long-range engagements in open terrain, where the Tiger's advantages in armor, protection, and gunpowder could be fully exploited. The Eastern Front provided thousands of square miles of relatively flat, open country, where visibility could extend for miles. In these conditions, the Tiger was indeed nearly invincible. The Western Front would prove dramatically different. The Bazooka's M6A3 rocket could penetrate approximately 4 inches, roughly 100 millimeters of armor at close range. On paper, this seemed inadequate against the Tiger's thick plating. The Tiger I's frontal armor measured 100 millimeters on the turret face and hull front, angled slightly to increase effective thickness. Side armor was 80 millimeters. The rear was 82 millimeters. These specifications suggested the Tiger could resist bazooka fire from most angles. But this calculation ignored the reality of armored combat. Tanks aren't solid blocks of steel. They're complex machines with vision ports, hatches, turret rings, and vulnerable rear sections. More critically, the Tiger I had several inherent weaknesses that became apparent only in close combat. The engine deck on top was just 25 millimeters thick, thin enough that even older bazooka rockets could penetrate easily. The vision ports, necessary for the driver and crew to see outside, created weak points in otherwise heavy armor. The turret ring, where the turret rotated on the hull, was protected by only 60 millimeters of armor. The rear armor, while officially 82 millimeters, included ventilation grills and access hatches that provided vulnerable points. American infantry quickly learned that armor thickness meant nothing if you could hit the weak spots, and at ranges under 100 yards, a skilled bazooka team could hit precisely what they aimed at. The shaped charge warhead of the bazooka rocket operated on principles of focused explosive energy. Upon impact, the rocket's hollow charge created a superheated jet of metal that could punch through solid steel. This wasn't about kinetic energy or shell velocity, it was about chemical energy focused to a point smaller than a pencil. The resulting penetration didn't depend on the rocket's speed or weight, but on the precise design of its explosive charge. This meant that unlike traditional anti-tank guns, where penetration decreased with range due to loss of velocity, the bazooka's penetration remained relatively constant at combat ranges. A rocket fired at 50 yards had nearly the same penetrating power as one fired at 200 yards. The only variable was whether the gunner could hit the target accurately. For the Tiger, this represented a fundamental vulnerability. Its armor had been designed to defeat kinetic penetrators, solid shot, and armor-piercing shells that relied on velocity and mass. Against shaped charge weapons, armor thickness alone provided less protection than German engineers had calculated. Before the bazooka, destroying tanks required specialized weapons, trained crews, and favorable circumstances. Anti-tank guns were large, heavy, and required vehicles to move them. Anti-tank rifles were marginally effective against light armor, but useless against anything heavier. Tank versus tank combat required months of training and favorable tactical conditions. The bazooka changed everything by making tank killing a skill that any infantryman could learn in hours rather than months. U.S. Army training records from Fort Benning documented the process. A soldier with no prior anti-tank training could achieve basic proficiency with the bazooka in approximately 2 hours of instruction. The weapon had only a few components. The tube, the shoulder stock with batteries later models, used magneto-ignition, and the rockets themselves. Loading involved inserting the rocket from the rear and connecting a wire. Aiming used simple iron sights or, in later models, a basic optical sight. The training progression was standardized across all infantry units. First, soldiers learned the weapon's components and safety procedures, 15 minutes of classroom instruction. Then they practiced loading and unloading, with dummy rounds, 30 minutes of hands-on training. Next came dry fire exercises, learning to shoulder the weapon, acquire targets, and squeeze the trigger properly, another 30 minutes. Finally came live fire. Soldiers would fire 3 to 5 practice rounds at stationary targets at ranges from 50 to 150 yards. This live fire training consumed the bulk of the 2-hour instruction period and provided soldiers with the confidence that the weapon actually worked and that they could hit targets with it. The simplicity was revolutionary. As Captain Franklin Johnson noted in his Fort Benning training report, "We could train a man to use the bazooka effectively in 1 afternoon. The same soldier would need weeks to master a 37mm anti-tank gun." But effectiveness in training didn't automatically translate to effectiveness in combat. The real education came in Italy and France, where American infantry learned through bitter experience how to actually kill tigers with their bazookas. The most dramatic tiger bazooka engagement occurred near Biscari, Sicily, in July 1943, during Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily. An 82nd Airborne Bazooka team from the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment faced a Tiger I from the Hermann Göring Panzer Division advancing down a narrow village street. The paratroopers had landed days earlier and were holding defensive positions in the town when German armor counterattacked. The Tiger appeared at the end of a street barely wide enough for the massive tank to pass, its 88mm gun traversing for targets. The American squad had no anti-tank gun, no supporting armor, and no air support. They had 3 men with M1 Garand rifles, a BAR gunner, and a 2-man bazooka team. The bazooka gunner, whose name was unfortunately not recorded in the unit's after-action report, understood his situation immediately. The Tiger's frontal armor was too thick to penetrate with a standard hit. Fleeing would have been suicide, the Tiger's machine guns would have cut them down in seconds. The street offered no cover, no escape route, and no concealment. But the gunner had been paying attention during training. Instructors had emphasized that tanks had vulnerable points, vision ports, hatches, turret rings. He had approximately 10 seconds to make a decision before the Tiger's commander spotted his position. The gunner did something remarkable. He aimed for the driver's vision slot, a small opening in the front armor, measuring roughly 8 inches wide and 4 inches tall. This required hitting a target the size of a paperback book at approximately 75 yards, while the Tiger was moving slowly forward. The margin for error was essentially 0. He fired. The rocket struck perfectly, penetrating through the narrow opening. Inside the Tiger, the effect was catastrophic. The shaped charge jet and explosive force in the confined space of the driver's compartment killed or severely wounded the driver and likely injured other crew members from fragments and overpressure. The Tiger stopped immediately. Within seconds, the surviving crew members bailed out, abandoning the vehicle. This wasn't typical performance, it was exceptional marksmanship under extreme pressure. After-action reports from Sicily show that most bazooka engagements against Tigers involved multiple hits to the side or rear armor, not precision shots into small vulnerable points. But the Biscari incident demonstrated a crucial principle. Against armored vehicles, precision mattered more than raw power. The 82nd Airborne's Intelligence Section examined the abandoned Tiger afterward. They found that the rocket had indeed penetrated through the vision slot, but more importantly, they documented the crew's reaction. The Germans hadn't waited to assess damage, they'd fled immediately upon being hit. This suggested that even when a bazooka couldn't destroy a Tiger outright, the psychological impact of being hit by infantry anti-tank weapons was profound enough to make crews abandon their vehicles. This observation would prove crucial in understanding the bazooka's effectiveness. The weapon didn't need to achieve a catastrophic kill every time. It only needed to convince the crew that staying in the tank was more dangerous than abandoning it. The mountainous terrain of Italy from late 1943 onward provided ideal conditions for bazooka employment against Tigers. The Italian campaign, beginning with the landings at Salerno in September 1943, forced German and Allied forces into terrain that negated most of the Tiger's advantages. Villages perched on hillsides featured narrow streets where tanks couldn't maneuver effectively. Medieval town planning had created streets barely wide enough for ox carts, let alone 60-ton tanks. The Tiger measured 12 feet wide, including tracks. Many Italian village streets were 15 to 20 feet wide at most, leaving just a few feet of clearance on each side. The Tiger couldn't turn around, couldn't reverse quickly, and couldn't traverse its turret effectively without risking damage to buildings. Buildings provided concealment until the last moment. The stone construction, typical of Italian towns, meant that bazooka teams could wait in ground floor rooms or cellars, invisible to Tiger commanders scanning for threats. The first indication a Tiger crew might have of danger would be the flash and smoke of a rocket launching from a building just yards away. American infantry developed mouse-holing tactics, blasting through building walls with explosives or bazookas themselves to create hidden firing positions. Instead of using doors and windows, which Tiger crews would be watching, American soldiers would blow a hole through a stone wall, creating an unexpected firing position. They would fire, then immediately retreat through the building, emerging on a different street entirely. Teams would wait on upper floors, targeting the thin top armor of passing Tigers. This tactic exploited one of the Tiger's most significant vulnerabilities. While the frontal and side armor was thick, the top armor was minimal, just 25 millimeters on the engine deck. A bazooka rocket hitting from above would penetrate easily, and the resulting explosion would often ignite fuel or ammunition. The engine deck became the preferred aiming point for teams operating from elevated positions. A hit there typically caused catastrophic fires as fuel and oil ignited. The Tiger's Maybach HL 230 engine ran on gasoline, not diesel, making it particularly vulnerable to fire. Even if the rocket didn't achieve immediate penetration, the heat and blast could damage fuel lines, causing leaks that would eventually lead to fire. Infantry units practiced these tactics extensively. The Fifth Army established training areas, where soldiers could practice firing at tanks from upper-story windows. They learned the optimal angles for top armor hits, typically 30 to 45 degrees from vertical. They practiced rapid repositioning after firing, recognizing that German infantry accompanying the tanks would immediately assault any building from which a rocket was fired. The December 1943 battle for Ortona demonstrated the weapon's versatility in urban combat. Canadian units fighting alongside American forces in Italy adopted and refined the mouse-holing tactics. The 1st Canadian Infantry Division's war diary recorded extensive use of bazookas not just against tanks, but against fortified houses and defensive positions. The shaped charge warhead proved devastatingly effective against stone walls and masonry. The Fifth Army's experience in Italy showed that Tiger tanks, despite their fearsome reputation, became cautious and defensive in built-up areas. German commanders stopped using them for breakthrough operations in towns and villages. The psychological shift was complete. The hunters had become the hunted. Field reports from early 1944 documented the change in German tactics. Tigers that had previously led assaults now followed behind infantry. Where Tigers had once charged forward independently, they now advanced only after buildings had been cleared by foot soldiers. The invincible tank had become cautious, defensive, and subordinate to infantry, a complete reversal of armoured doctrine. If Italian towns were bad for Tigers, the hedgerow country of Normandy after D-Day created an even more lethal environment. The bocage, ancient earthen walls topped with dense vegetation that divided the countryside into small fields, limited visibility to 50 to 100 yards in most areas. Tigers couldn't use their main advantage, the 88mm guns long range that allowed them to engage targets at 2,000 yards or more on the Eastern Front. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Every intersection became a potential ambush site. The hedgerows, some over 10 feet tall and thick enough to stop vehicles, created a maze where American infantry could hide mere yards from German armour. The vegetation was so dense that Tigers approaching an intersection often couldn't see if the next field was occupied until they were completely exposed. The 29th Infantry Division, which had landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day, perfected ambush tactics against German armour in the bocage over the weeks following the invasion. Their experience proved so valuable that the division's after-action reports became the basis for anti-tank training for subsequent units arriving in France. The key was patience and discipline, letting the tank move past your position to expose its thinner side and rear armour. This violated every soldier's instinct for self-preservation. Natural human reaction when facing a tank is to shoot as soon as possible, and then flee. But bazooka teams learned that the first shot was usually the only shot, so it had to count. The tactical procedure developed by the 29th Division worked as follows. Teams of 4, 2, 6 men would set up positions in hedgerows perpendicular to likely tank approach routes. They would dig shallow firing positions right into the earthen base of the hedgerow, concealed by vegetation. 2 men operated the bazooka, while the others provided security and suppressive fire against German infantry. When a Tiger approached, the security team would signal its approach usually by hand signals or whispers, as radio communication at squad level was limited. The bazooka team would wait, motionless, while the Tiger passed within yards of their position. The noise of the tank's engine and tracks would mask any small sounds. The buttoned-up crew, with limited visibility through vision ports, would rarely spot well-concealed infantry. Once the Tiger passed, exposing its side armour, the gunner would fire into the drive sprocket, road wheels, or side armour. Hitting the drive sprocket or tracks would immobilise the tank, preventing retreat. Hits to the side armour aimed for ammunition storage or fuel tanks. The assistant gunner would already be loading a second rocket for an immediate follow-up shot. Multiple teams would coordinate, hitting the same tank from different angles simultaneously. This tactic, developed through trial and error, maximised the chance of achieving a catastrophic kill while minimising the tank's ability to respond. A Tiger crew under fire from one direction could traverse the turret and suppress that position with machine gun fire, but a Tiger taking hits from 3 different directions simultaneously couldn't respond to all threats. Combat records show that in hedgerow country, hit probability with bazookas increased dramatically. At 50 yards, the hit rate reached 85%, far higher than the 42% hit probability at 100 yards documented in open terrain. The shorter range, combined with more stable firing positions and the ability to take careful aim without immediate return fire, made bazooka teams far more effective. German tank commanders reported growing reluctance to advance without extensive infantry support clearing every hedgerow. This slowed offensive operations to a crawl. Where German armour doctrine emphasized speed and shock, the bocage forced methodical, time-consuming advances. Tigers that could cross miles of open terrain in hours now took entire days to advance a few hundred yards. The SS Panzer divisions committed to Normandy found their Tiger companies increasingly ineffective. Kurt Meyer, commander of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, wrote in his post-war memoirs that the bocage neutralized our armour advantage completely. His division's Tigers, which should have been decisive breakthrough weapons, instead became defensive strongpoints that required infantry protection. Analysis of combat data from Italy, Normandy, and later campaigns revealed that 75 yards was the optimal engagement range for bazookas against heavy armor. This distance emerged from combat experience, not theoretical calculations, and became codified in infantry doctrine. Closer than 50 yards, and the gunner risked being spotted before firing. Tank commanders and supporting infantry would be scanning nearby terrain intensively. The blast and backblast signature of a bazooka launch was obvious at very close range. More critically, at ranges under 50 yards, German infantry could respond immediately with grenades or assault fire, making escape after firing extremely difficult. Beyond 100 yards, accuracy dropped significantly. The bazooka rocket wasn't ballistically sophisticated. It was essentially a tube with explosives and a simple stabilizing motor. Wind affected its trajectory. The rocket's relatively slow velocity, about 270 feet per second, meant that at longer ranges, the gunner had to lead moving targets significantly. Hitting specific weak points on a tank became increasingly difficult beyond 100 yards. But at 75 yards, a well-trained team could consistently hit specific target points on a tank. The range was close enough for accuracy, but far enough to provide some chance of concealment and escape. The flight time was approximately 1 second, fast enough that tank commanders had minimal warning. This range became doctrine. Infantry learned to set up ambush positions that channeled German armor into kill zones at exactly this distance. In Italian towns, teams measured distances in advance, marking optimal firing positions with inconspicuous chalk marks or memorizing landmarks. Soldiers would pace off distances during lulls in combat, identifying positions that were 75 yards from likely tank approach routes. In Normandy hedgerows, they estimated ranges using local features. A technique that became widespread involved using the tank itself as a measuring tool. Soldiers learned that a tiger appeared to fill a certain proportion of their vision at different ranges. Training taught them to visualize the tank at 50, 75, and 100 yards, and fire when the target matched the 75-yard template in their mind. The tiger's commander couldn't see threats at this range effectively. His vision ports and periscopes had limited fields of view, typically covering a 30 to 40 degree arc to the front. Side vision was even more restricted. Tank commanders often fought with their heads out of the turret hatch for better visibility, but this exposed them to small arms fire. In close terrain, they had to button up, reducing their awareness dramatically. By the time a Tiger commander spotted muzzle flash from a bazooka launch at 75 yards, the rocket was already in flight. The flight time of approximately 1 second gave no opportunity to take evasive action. Even if the commander saw the launch, there was nothing he could do except brace for impact and hope the rocket missed or hit thick armor. American infantry exploited this limitation ruthlessly. They set up positions that would be invisible until the moment of firing, used terrain to mask their preparation, and trained religiously on range estimation. The 75-yard kill zone became so standardized that experienced soldiers could often estimate range by eye to within 10 yards, accurate enough for effective bazooka employment. Perhaps more devastating than the physical damage was the psychological impact on German tank crews. The Tiger was supposed to make its crew invincible. German tank aces had accumulated extraordinary kill counts on the Eastern Front, often destroying dozens of enemy tanks without their Tigers receiving significant damage. This bred confidence bordering on arrogance. Pre-war German doctrine emphasized speed, shock, and aggressive maneuver. Panzer forces were supposed to punch through enemy lines, then exploit breakthroughs by driving deep into enemy rear areas. Tigers, despite their weight and mechanical issues, were supposed to lead these assaults, using their superior armor and firepower to smash through resistance. But against bazooka-equipped infantry, aggression became suicidal. Every building might hide a bazooka team, every hedgerow could conceal an ambush. Charging forward meant exposing thin side and rear armor to hidden threats. The psychological calculus changed completely. A Wehrmacht training directive issued in December 1943 after less than 6 months of fighting bazooka-equipped American units mandated that tanks would not operate in urban areas without infantry support. Buildings had to be cleared before armor advanced. Minimum standoff distance, 100 meters from uncleared structures. This represented a complete abandonment of previous doctrine. The German army, which had conquered Poland in weeks and France in 6 weeks through aggressive armoured operations, now ordered its tanks to hang back, to wait for infantry, to advance cautiously. The Tigers were no longer spearheads but support weapons. German tank crews began adding improvised armour, spare track links, sandbags, even concrete to their vehicles. This practice, called field modifications, became so widespread that most Tigers photographed in France in 1944 show some form of improvised armour. Crews would weld spare track sections to hull sides and turret faces. They would pile sandbags on engine decks and around turrets. Some crews even mixed concrete and applied it to vulnerable points. This extra weight reduced mobility and mechanical reliability. The Tiger already suffered from a troublesome transmission and drivetrain that struggled with its 60-ton weight. Adding another few tons of improvised armour made breakdowns even more common. The Tiger's operational readiness rate, the percentage of vehicles available for combat at any given time, dropped from around 70% in late 1943 to below 50% by summer 1944. More significantly, the improvised armour revealed the psychological state of German crews. Soldiers who felt invincible don't pile sandbags on their vehicles. Soldiers who feel vulnerable, who fear hidden threats, who've lost confidence in their armour, those soldiers desperately seek any additional protection, no matter how marginal. Post-war interrogations of German tank crewmen revealed the depth of this psychological shift. One Tiger commander from the 1st SS Panzer Division, interviewed in 1945, stated, "We feared the American rocket launchers more than their tanks. The Shermans we could see and defeat. The infantry with rockets could be anywhere, invisible until the moment they fired. After France, none of us felt safe in a Tiger anymore." This fear manifested in operational hesitancy. Tigers that should have counterattacked aggressively instead held defensive positions. Tank commanders who should have exploited breakthroughs instead waited for infantry support. The weapon that was supposed to win battles through shock and firepower instead became cautious, defensive, and increasingly ineffective. The Ardennes Offensive, in December 1944, Germany's last major offensive in the West, provided the ultimate test of bazookas against Tigers in close combat. The heavily forested terrain of the Ardennes, with its narrow roads and small villages, created countless close-range encounters. The addition of severe winter weather tested both weapons and men to their limits. Despite extreme cold affecting rocket propellant performance, American infantry destroyed or disabled 89 German armoured vehicles during the Battle of the Bulge, including numerous Tigers. This figure comes from 18th Airborne Corps records compiled immediately after the battle and represents only confirmed kills that could be documented by examining destroyed vehicles. The extreme cold created documented problems for bazooka crews. Battery failures in remaining M1A1 models still in service required soldiers to warm batteries inside their jackets before use. The 2nd Infantry Division reported that rocket propellant burned differently in sub-zero temperatures, affecting range and accuracy. Some rockets that should have reached 300 yards fell short by 50 yards or more due to incomplete propellant combustion in the cold. Yet American soldiers adapted. They learned to warm rockets by placing them near their bodies or small fires before loading. They adjusted their aim to compensate for the reduced range. Most importantly, they maintained aggressive tank hunting tactics, despite facing some of Germany's best remaining armoured formations. The 99th Infantry Division's combat interviews, conducted within days of engagements while memories were fresh, document multiple Tiger kills under extreme conditions. These interviews, preserved in the National Archives, provide detailed accounts of bazooka employment in winter combat. Technical Sergeant Donald Bracken of the 394th Infantry Regiment reported destroying a Panther tank near Rocherath on December 17th 1,944. The rocket hit the rear engine deck. The tank caught fire, and the crew abandoned it. Range was about 75 yards. I'd warmed the rocket inside my jacket for 10 minutes before we saw the tank. Private First Class William James, 395th Infantry Regiment, described an engagement on December 18th. We let 3 Tigers pass our position, waited until they were 50 to 75 yards past us. Then my gunner hit the last one in the side. Second rocket hit the middle one in the tracks. They couldn't turn around in that narrow road, couldn't back up fast enough. Third team hit the lead tank. All 3 crews bailed out. We destroyed 3 Tigers in about 2 minutes. These accounts reveal the effectiveness of coordinated ambush tactics, even under the worst conditions. The Ardennes forest provided concealment similar to the Normandy bocage. Narrow roads through the woods channeled German armor into predictable routes. American infantry, fighting desperately to slow the German advance, used bazookas to maximum effect. German crews frequently abandoned Tigers that were only damaged because they feared being trapped in a burning vehicle. This pattern, noted throughout the Italian and French campaigns, became even more pronounced during the Battle of the Bulge. Post-battle examination of abandoned German tanks often showed relatively minor damage, a hit to the track system, damage to external stowage, or a single penetration that hadn't reached critical systems. The willingness of German crews to abandon damaged vehicles reflected both the psychological impact of bazooka fire and practical concerns. A Tiger immobilized by track damage in a narrow forest road became a sitting target for American artillery and airstrikes. Crew survival often meant abandoning the vehicle and retreating on foot. The Tiger's low operational mobility, it could barely manage 100 miles on a full fuel load under ideal conditions, meant that even minor mechanical damage in enemy-held territory made recovery impossible. The economics of Tiger versus bazooka engagements were staggering, revealing why industrial capacity mattered as much as technical sophistication in World War II. A Tiger I cost approximately 250,000 Reichsmarks to produce roughly $100,000 in 1944 dollars, equivalent to over $1.7 million today, when adjusted for inflation. This price included not just the raw materials and manufacturing, but also the specialized machinery, skilled labor, and testing required to produce such a complex vehicle. Production time for a single Tiger exceeded 300,000 man-hours. Training a Tiger crew took months of specialized instruction. The driver needed extensive training on the complex transmission and steering system. The gunner required weeks of practice to master the sophisticated optics and fire control system. The commander needed tactical training on how to employ the vehicle effectively. A fully trained Tiger crew represented an enormous investment in time and expertise. Losing one Tiger represented a massive investment lost. Germany produced approximately 1,300 Tiger I tanks during the entire war, a replacement rate that could never keep pace with combat losses once American and British forces landed in France. By contrast, a bazooka cost $25 to manufacture. The M6A3 rockets cost $8.85 each. Average engagement to destroy or disable a Tiger, approximately 5 rockets fired accounting for misses and multiple hits needed. Total cost, approximately $70 in ammunition, plus the $25 launcher if it was lost or destroyed. This meant American forces could theoretically destroy over 1,400 Tigers for the cost of producing a single one. Even accounting for the human cost American soldiers killed or wounded in close-range engagements, the economic efficiency was remarkable. The implications extended beyond simple cost comparison. America could afford to give every infantry squad bazookas and unlimited ammunition. By 1944, the typical American infantry company had 5 to 6 bazookas. An infantry battalion had 25 to 35. An infantry division had several hundred. This proliferation meant that German armor faced anti-tank threats at every level of battlefield. Germany couldn't match this proliferation. Even their copy of the bazooka, the Panzerschreck, cost more to produce and was never available in similar numbers. German infantry units were chronically short of effective anti-tank weapons, relying on towed anti-tank guns that required vehicles to move and crews to operate. In practice, the psychological and tactical impact was even greater than the raw numbers suggested. Tigers were increasingly withdrawn from close combat situations entirely. German commanders, recognizing the vulnerability of their precious heavy tanks to cheap infantry weapons, held them back for defensive operations in open terrain where their range and armor advantages could be exploited. This shift fundamentally altered German armored doctrine. Tigers that should have been winning battles through aggressive offensive action instead sat in defensive positions, waiting for favorable conditions that rarely materialized. The offensive power of German armor was neutralized not by technical superiority but by economic reality. It was simply too expensive to risk Tigers in close combat against bazooka-equipped infantry. The effectiveness of bazookas against Tigers wasn't automatic. It required tactical innovation developed through combat experience. American infantry learned lessons written in blood during the Italian and French campaigns, creating a body of tactical knowledge that transformed the bazooka from a moderately effective weapon into a true tank killer. Combat units developed specific tactics for different terrain types. In urban areas, the standard procedure involved multi-story ambushes. Teams would position in buildings on both sides of a street, at different floor levels. When a tiger entered the street, teams would fire simultaneously from different angles and elevations, making it impossible for the crew to respond to all threats. Upper floor teams targeted the thin top armor. Ground floor teams targeted the side hull and tracks. This vertical separation of fire meant that even if the Tiger's turret machine guns suppressed one position, other teams could continue firing. The practice became so standardized that training exercises at Fort Benning incorporated mock-up buildings specifically for practicing multi-story ambush tactics. In hedgerow country, the emphasis shifted to patience and coordination. Bazooka teams would establish positions in hedgerows forming a rough L-shape or V-shape, creating an ambush zone where tanks would be exposed to fire from multiple directions. The lead team would let the Tiger pass, then fire into the engine deck or rear. This would stop or slow the tank, allowing other teams to engage from better angles. Security elements became crucial. German infantry invariably accompanied tanks, searching for anti-tank teams. American infantry learned to position riflemen and automatic weapons to suppress German infantry while bazooka teams engaged armor. This combined arms approach at the squad level represented a sophisticated evolution in small unit tactics. Communication between teams relied heavily on pre-arranged signals. Radio communication at squad and platoon level was limited in 1944. So teams used visual signals often as simple as raising a hand or helmet to coordinate firing. The goal was simultaneous engagement, overwhelming the tank's ability to respond. Escape routes were planned before engagement. After firing, teams had to relocate immediately. German doctrine called for infantry to assault any building or position from which anti-tank fire originated. American soldiers learned to prepare multiple positions, fire from one, then move to another before German infantry could respond. Mouse-holing through buildings or crawling through hedgerows provided covered withdrawal routes. Ammunition management became sophisticated. Teams carried multiple rockets, but weight limited them to perhaps 5 or 6 per two-man team. Knowing that 5 rockets might need to disable a Tiger, teams learned to make every shot count. First shot went to the most experienced gunner, targeting the most vulnerable point available. Subsequent shots aimed for different points. If the first rocket hit the engine deck, the second would target the side hull or turret ring. Weather and time of day factored into tactics. Teams preferred engaging Tigers in late afternoon or early morning, when low sun would be in German crews' eyes. Rain and fog, while reducing visibility for both sides, helped conceal bazooka teams until the moment of firing. Wind required compensation in aim, with experienced gunners learning to judge wind effect on the relatively slow-moving rockets. Unit pride developed around successful Tiger kills. Soldiers who destroyed Tigers gained respect within their units. Some divisions kept informal tallies of tank kills by company and battalion. This competitive element encouraged aggressive tank hunting and rapid sharing of successful tactics between units. The presence of bazookas in every American unit forced fundamental changes in German armored doctrine, changes that German commanders implemented with growing desperation as the war progressed. Wehrmacht training directives from late 1943 through 1945 document this evolution. The December 1943 directive mandating infantry support for tanks in urban areas was just the beginning. Subsequent directives required minimum 100-meter standoff from uncleared buildings, mandatory infantry screens advancing ahead of armor, prohibition on independent tank operations in close terrain, required use of artillery and mortar fire to suppress potential, bazooka positions before tank advances, installation of side skirts, Schürzen, on all armored vehicles to provide additional protection against shaped charge weapons. The Schürzen, thin metal plates mounted on brackets several inches away from the hull, represented a specific response to shaped charge threats. The theory was that a common rocket hitting the skirt would detonate prematurely, reducing penetration of the main armor. In practice, effectiveness varied. The skirts were easily damaged by rough terrain, and many crews removed them because they made maintenance difficult. Application of Zimmerit paste, a hard coating applied to German tanks from late 1943 to mid-194, was partially motivated by shaped charge concerns, though officially it was anti-magnetic mine protection. The paste added weight and offered minimal actual protection, but its use reflected German concern about infantry anti-tank weapons. More significantly, German tactical doctrine shifted from offensive to defensive employment of heavy tanks. Field manuals from 1944 onwards emphasized using Tigers as mobile strongpoints in defensive operations rather than breakthrough weapons in offensive operations. This represented a complete abandonment of the principles that had brought Germany victory in 1940 to 1941. The bazooka's psychological and tactical impact on German armored forces extended far beyond its physical damage. By late 1944, captured German training documents showed that Tiger crews were instructed to fight defensively, favoring hull-down positions, fire discipline, and quick withdrawal when infantry approached. Reports from France and Italy identified American rocket launchers as a major threat. A second SS Panzer Division document from March 1944 stated, "American rocket launchers present in every infantry unit. Speed and shock tactics no longer viable." This shift from aggressive maneuver to defensive caution undermined Germany's armored doctrine. The U.S. Army's methodical style infantry-supported advances with overwhelming firepower played perfectly into this change. The bazooka didn't make the Tiger obsolete through superior technology, but by denying it the conditions it needed to succeed: open terrain, long sight lines, and freedom from close threats. By 1945, German armor had lost its offensive character. Portable anti-tank weapons in every squad ended the era of tanks as independent breakthrough weapons. The bazooka symbolized this new age of combined arms, where infantry could contest armor directly. U.S. Army Ordnance data from 1945 revealed the bazooka's strengths and limits. Average combat range was 75 yards, proof it was a close-range weapon. Hit probability dropped sharply with distance, 85% at 50 yards, 68% at 75, and just 18% at 150. Armor penetration with the M6A3 rocket reached up to 102 mm, enough to pierce a Tiger's sides but rarely its front. Yet, even non-penetrating hits caused crew injury, shock, and fear. Many Tigers were abandoned after such impacts, their crews shaken by the violence of near penetrations. A First Army analysis showed the bazooka's share of total tank kills at 12% less than tank guns or anti-tank artillery, but remarkable for a weapon carried by ordinary infantry. Unlike tanks, aircraft, or towed guns, bazookas were everywhere, cheap and easy to use. Adjusted for availability, they were arguably the most cost-effective anti-tank weapon of the war. In reality, their impact was likely higher. Many tanks forced to withdraw or later destroyed by artillery had first been immobilized by bazooka fire. Tanks avoided villages and forests known to harbor bazooka teams. A tiger refusing to enter a town because of hidden rocket launchers was as neutralized as one destroyed. The Tiger itself embodied Germany's belief in technical excellence. Its 88mm gun, heavy armor, and intricate suspension made it formidable but fragile. Maintenance was nightmarish. Changing an inner road wheel could take hours. Its Maybach engine required high-quality fuel and constant care. Its transmission was notoriously delicate. German readiness rates for Tigers often fell below 50%. The bazooka, by contrast, was nearly maintenance-free. Dropped in mud or rain, it still worked. For every Tiger produced about 1,300 total. America built 476,000 bazookas and 15 million rockets, a 3:6:6 ratio. The contrast symbolized the wider economic war Germany could not win. Training and logistics favored America just as decisively. Tiger crews required 4-6 months of instruction. Bazooka operators learned in 2 hours. Each Tiger consumed enormous amounts of fuel and spare parts, while bazookas required none. American infantry surrounded at Bastogne still had functioning bazookas delivered by airdrop, while German tanks elsewhere sat idle for lack of fuel. Psychologically, the bazooka transformed the battlefield. Early in the war, infantrymen felt helpless before tanks, often panicking when armor appeared. The bazooka ended tank panic. Soldiers now hunted armor rather than fleeing it. Private James Wilson of the 1st Infantry Division said after Sicily, "Before we got bazookas, seeing a German tank meant running or dying. After, it meant a chance to kill it." This confidence boosted morale, aggressiveness, and unit cohesion. Bazooka teams became heroes, their skill admired rather than pitied. For German crews, the effect was opposite. The Tiger's supposed invincibility became a lie. Bazookas struck unseen from buildings, hedgerows, or rubble, offering no warning. Crews described fighting blind in close terrain. Medical reports showed rising stress and combat fatigue among Western Front tank crews. Many abandoned vehicles after the first hit, even if not penetrated fear had replaced confidence. At the operational level, American commanders exploited this advantage. In Italy's mountains, terrain that once seemed to favor German defense now benefited U.S. infantry. Bazooka-armed troops dominated narrow passes and villages where tanks could not maneuver. Similarly, in Normandy, the bocage initially seen as an obstacle became an ally. Hidden rocket teams decimated German armor in hedgerow country, leaving few tanks to oppose the breakout at Operation Cobra. By 1944, bazooka rockets were dearer, resupplied with the same priority as rifle ammunition. Informal specialization emerged within units. Experienced gunners trained others, refining tactics through field experience rather than doctrine. Continuous improvement kept the weapon relevant. The unreliable, battery-ignited M1 gave way to the magneto-fired, two-piece M9, and later the M9A1 with better sights. The final wartime model, the aluminum M18, arrived in 1945. Rocket design evolved too. The M6A3's blunt nose improved detonation on sloped armor, while the M10 white phosphorus round provided smoke and incendiary effects, devastating against fortifications. In the Pacific, where Japanese tanks were rare, bazookas found new purpose. On Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, Marines used them to destroy bunkers and caves. The shaped charge warhead pierced reinforced concrete and coral defenses. White phosphorus rockets flushed out defenders or suffocated them with smoke. At Iwo Jima, one division fired nearly 1,900 rockets in 6 weeks, most against fortifications, not armor. The bazooka became a versatile infantry assault weapon, effective wherever artillery or tanks could not reach. Strategically, the bazooka-tiger contrast epitomized two opposing philosophies of war. Germany prized perfection superior machines operated by elite professionals. The Tiger embodied this ethos: complex, powerful, but scarce and fragile. America valued adequacy, quantity, and adaptability. The Bazooka was simple, mass-producible, and easily improved. German industrial culture emphasized craftsmanship and precision. American industry emphasized scale and flexibility. When early bazookas failed, better ones appeared within months. Factories adapted instantly, training manuals updated in weeks. German systems dependent on skilled labor and precision parts could not match such responsiveness. This divergence extended to doctrine. The US trusted citizen soldiers to innovate. Squad-level improvisation firing from windows, trenches, or upper stories was encouraged. German doctrine relied on professional soldiers following established procedures with elite equipment. The bazooka's success was democratic in nature. Ordinary soldiers using simple tools defeated specialized professionals with superior machines. In that sense, the bazooka symbolized America's strategic strength, the ability to arm every soldier effectively, rather than rely on a few exceptional ones. The Tiger celebrated individual brilliance. The bazooka empowered the collective. While the Tiger remains legendary for its engineering, it ultimately lost to industrial democracy. In the hedgerows of France and the mountains of Italy, $25 tubes humbled $100,000 tanks. For every Tiger that rolled out of German factories, hundreds of bazookas awaited it, cheap, reliable, and deadly. The bazooka didn't need to surpass the Tiger. It merely denied it favorable conditions. By turning every village and hedgerow into a potential ambush site, it made the battlefield itself hostile to German armor. Its psychological effect eroding aggressiveness, instilling caution proved as decisive as its explosive charge. In the end, it was not superior engineering but superior adaptability, production, and faith in ordinary soldiers that decided the contest. The Tiger was a triumph of design, the bazooka a triumph of philosophy. It marked the shift from aristocratic warfare to democratic warfare, from the age of elite machines to the age of empowered soldiers. The bazooka's legacy endures. Modern armies still issue portable anti-tank weapons to every infantry unit, from the M72 LAW to the Javelin and RPG. The principle remains the same. Any soldier should have the means to stop any tank. Germany built the better tank. America built 366 times more of the adequate weapon. That difference, not technical superiority but systemic flexibility, defined victory. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.